The morning sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, brushing the edges of the study with a soft gold. I sat at the desk, the notebook open, the pages worn with time and wisdom. The confrontation had passed, the truth had been revealed, the choice had been made. And now, the weight of the empire and of the lessons I had learned rested in my hands. He stood quietly by the doorway, watching me. There was a new calm in his eyes. No arrogance, no misjudgment, only awareness. He had accepted responsibility. That alone shifted the room. The tension that had once filled the air was gone, replaced by quiet understanding. "I want to thank you," he said softly, voice steady but reflective, "for showing me what matters. I see now that trying to take control wasn't helping anyone, not even me." I nodded, a gentle smile forming. "You tried to help, but understanding the people, the legacy, the details, that's what makes leadership real. That's what my grandmother built her life on. And now we can honor that together." He lowered his gaze, a hint of emotion in his eyes. "I don't deserve your patience," I said calmly. "You do. Everyone deserves a chance to learn from mistakes. That's how we grow. That's how trust is rebuilt." We walked through the hotel together that morning. I noticed the subtle ways the staff responded, glances that held relief, soft smiles, a recognition that the empire was being guided by someone who understood it, who respected it, who had the vision to preserve it. The balance was returning, not through punishment, not through fear, but through understanding, clarity, and care. In the executive office, I handed him a folder. Inside were the carefully reviewed contracts, the notes from the notebook, and a plan for moving forward. These are the steps. We follow them together, not to control, but to restore, to honor the work your actions once threatened, not out of spite, but out of responsibility. He took the folder slowly, fingers brushing the edges as if it were more than paper. "I understand, and I'll follow it. I promise." I felt the tension lift further. The quiet storm had passed. Balance had returned. Not dramatic, not loud, but absolute in its subtlety. The hotel empire, my grandmother's life's work, was safe. Not because I had fought against someone, but because I had acted with wisdom, patience, and heart. Later, I returned to the study alone. The notebook lay open, its pages filled with decades of guidance. I picked up a small envelope tucked inside, a note my grandmother had left for me years ago. I hadn't read it in full until now. Carefully, I unfolded it. "Strength is quiet. Justice is thoughtful. Always choose patience, and you will find clarity. Protect what is valuable, not with anger, but with wisdom. Remember, the true legacy is the trust you earn, not the power you take." I folded the note, holding it to my chest for a moment. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that made my chest swell with understanding. I realized, fully, that the journey had been about more than hotels or inheritance. It had been about integrity, about rising above immediate emotions, about creating a life that honored the lessons of those who came before me. I placed the note gently back in the notebook and walked to the balcony. The city sprawled below, alive and bright, unaware of the quiet resolution that had taken place within these walls. A soft breeze carried the scent of morning, the subtle fragrance of flowers from the hotel gardens blending with the hum of early traffic. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the world fill me, the sunlight, the air, the distant sounds of laughter from staff preparing for the day. Peace had returned. It wasn't loud or boisterous. It was quiet, steady, and deeply satisfying. I thought of the staff, the empire, my grandmother, and even my mother's husband. Each had a role, each had learned, and each now understood. The hotel was more than a business. It was a home, a legacy, and a living testament to patience, care, and moral clarity. Finally, I opened the balcony door wider, letting the sunlight spill fully into the room. The city outside sparkled, each light reflecting the new balance inside. I felt a smile form, soft and genuine. And as I looked out over the skyline, I whispered softly to myself, a final reflection, both for me and the story itself. Some legacies aren't built on power. They're built on patience, understanding, and the courage to do what is right, even when it's quiet. The wind carried my words lightly, and in that moment, everything felt settled. Justice had been achieved, not with anger, not with cruelty, but with heart. The journey had ended where it began, in wisdom, calm, and the quiet knowledge that true strength always chooses balance over conflict. The empire was safe, the lessons were clear, and the story, finally, had reached its peace. The morning was quiet, too quiet. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, warm and ordinary, but I felt a knot in my chest before I even touched the mail. It wasn't the usual stack of bills, it wasn't a flyer from the grocery store. It was a single envelope, crisp and white, my daughter's handwriting scrawled across the front. I froze. My hand hovered over it. My heart raced. She hadn't called in weeks. Her life had been moving too fast. School, friends, a first taste of independence. And now, here was this letter, heavy with unspoken questions. I tore it open, careful not to rip the paper. The words hit me like a punch I wasn't ready for. Dad, I don't understand. What money? Why did you send me $3,000 every month? The room spun. $3,000. Every month. She had found out. She had discovered the secret I had been keeping quietly, carefully, for months. My chest tightened. It wasn't the money. It was everything behind it. The guilt, the missed birthdays, the nights I couldn't be there for. The years of trying to make up for lost time from a distance. I sank into the chair, staring at the note. Seconds before this moment, life had seemed normal. I had a routine, a rhythm, coffee steaming on the counter, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the calm before revelation. And now, it felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Her words weren't accusatory. They were confused, shocked, and that confusion cut deeper than anger ever could. I remembered the long nights, sitting at my laptop after work, making sure the money would reach her safely. Music lessons, art classes, tutoring, small joys I could never be there for in person. I had done it quietly, hoping she'd never need to know, but also hoping that one day she'd feel my love through my actions. The memory of my parents' warnings came back sharply. They said, "Money can't replace time. Don't expect her to thank you. She'll see it as buying her affection." I had brushed them off. I had wanted to support her, even if it meant keeping my distance, even if it meant being invisible in her life. But now, that invisibility had ended. I thought about my daughter, her laughter on video calls, her sharp, quick humor, her little quirks I miss so much. All of it condensed into that single question. It was more than about money. It was about trust, about the invisible bridge I had tried to build, and now it felt like the bridge was cracking. I read the note again. My fingers trembled slightly. What should I say? How do I explain years of quiet support in a few sentences? How do I make her see that love isn't always loud or dramatic, but it's there, persistent, patient, unyielding? I typed a message slowly, carefully. I sent the money because I love you, not because I expect anything in return. I wanted to support your dreams, your growth, your happiness, even from afar. I understand it may feel strange now, but my intention has always been to help quietly, with respect for you. I stopped, read it out loud. It sounded calm, honest, but would it reach her? Would she understand? Or had my secrecy already changed how she saw me? The kitchen was silent. I could hear my own breathing, slow and uneven. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to this quiet storm. I felt the years of absence, of missed chances pressed down on me. I had given her money, but now I realized I hadn't given her the most important thing: presence. Then my phone buzzed, a message from her. My heart stopped. My fingers froze over the screen. The notification stared at me, unread, waiting. I knew that moment would define everything. The next words she typed could either rebuild the bridge or shatter it completely. I swallowed hard. I pressed my finger against the screen. And then, without warning, I saw the words that would change everything. The screen glowed softly in the dim kitchen. I stared at my daughter's unread message, trying to remember how we got here, how a simple act of love had turned into confusion and distance. My mind drifted back, uninvited but insistent, to the years before the letters, before the monthly transfers. I remembered the mornings she used to wake me with her tiny hands tugging at my sleeve. "Daddy, watch me," she'd shout, bouncing on the edge of the bed with a grin so wide it could break through any bad day. I'd smile, too tired to move quickly, but I'd smile because it was her. Those mornings were ours. Then, the afternoons blurred into my work and her mother's absence. "I'll be home soon," I'd promise over and over, knowing that soon was a lie. I told myself as much as her. My parents would stand nearby, shaking their heads. "You're too busy," they'd say. "She needs more than promises." And they were right. I missed birthdays, school plays, science fairs. I missed the first time she rode her bike without training wheels. I missed the night she cried because her best friend moved away. I missed the small, everyday things that mattered the most. I saw her face clearly in my mind now, tiny, tear-streaked, looking up at me with a mix of anger and disappointment. "Why didn't you come?" she asked once, her voice shaking. I couldn't answer. I just held her hand and wished the words I had weren't trapped in my chest. After she moved in with my parents full-time, our relationship became letters and phone calls, brief glimpses into a life I no longer fully shared. I tried to support her, sending money quietly, making sure she had what she needed for school, her hobbies, small treats, but all I could do was watch from afar, invisible but persistent. I remembered a specific night years ago when she had called me in tears after a fight with a friend. "I don't have anyone, Dad. Why aren't you here?" "I'm always here," I said, even though I wasn't. "I don't feel it." That moment haunted me, not because of the words, but because they were true. I had provided, but I hadn't been present. My absence had left a void I tried to fill with money, with gestures she couldn't see. And now she had discovered the truth of those gestures, and I could only imagine how she felt. Betrayed, maybe, or just overwhelmed. The house was empty that evening, yet full of memories. I could see her laughter echoing in the hallway, the soft patter of her feet running across the living room, the way she'd hug me tight when I picked her up from school. Those moments were gone, swallowed by time and distance. And then I remembered the fight that changed everything. She was 12. Her mother had decided to take her across the country for a week without warning. I tried to fight it, tried to call, to reason, to beg for one more day, but she left anyway. When she returned, she was quieter, wiser, older somehow. She looked at me differently, like I had failed her. And maybe I had. "Why didn't you stop her?" she asked, eyes sharp, voice steady. "I tried," I said. "I did everything I could." "It wasn't enough," she said, turning away. I never forgot the sting of those words. They lodged in my chest and refused to leave. I poured what I could into supporting her life from a distance. I tried to be there, even if I couldn't be there physically. But I always knew she might never understand why I did it. And now, years later, with her letter in my hands, I felt the weight of all that loss. The trust that had frayed, the closeness that had slipped away, the small joys that we'd never share again. It wasn't about the money. It was about everything the money represented: love, care, attention, and my failure to be there when it mattered most. I stood and moved to the window, staring at the city lights as they flickered in the distance. And then, on a whim, I logged into the old account I had kept for her, the one I rarely checked. I wanted to make sure everything had gone smoothly, that she had used the funds wisely. And that's when I saw it. A series of notes she had left attached to the transfers, messages I had never noticed before. They weren't just thank you notes. They were personal confessions, tiny glimpses into her world, her struggles, her triumphs. And one stood out. "I wish Dad knew how much I really needed him. Maybe someday he will." My hands shook. For the first time, I realized she had understood, even in the quiet way of her words, the intention behind my actions. She hadn't betrayed me. She had been waiting for recognition, for presence, for the connection I had promised but never fully given. It was a small discovery, almost invisible in the grand scheme of our lives, but in that moment, it shifted everything. I wasn't just a distant provider. I was still her father. I still had a chance to rebuild. But the path forward wasn't clear yet. I had no idea how she would respond when I reached out with honesty, when I revealed the depth of my care beyond the money. And then, just as I was about to close the computer, another notification popped up. This one wasn't from her. It was from someone else, a family member, a note that hinted at secrets even older than the letters I had sent. My heart jumped. The truth was bigger than I thought.
The night outside was still, but inside, my mind raced. The discovery from the old account had shifted something in me. I wasn't just a father watching from afar anymore. I had to act. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but with intention, with purpose, with care that reached beyond mistakes and distance. I stood by the window for a long time, looking at the city lights blinking like tiny promises. Each one reminded me of choices I could make, paths I could take. I thought about my daughter and the letter she had sent, her confusion, her shock, her quiet plea for understanding. It demanded more than money. It demanded presence, patience, and strategy. The first step was subtle. I needed to reintroduce myself into her life without overwhelming her. I drafted a message, not about the money, not about past regrets, but about small, shared interests. "I saw your new art project online. It's amazing. Can we talk about it?" Simple, honest, enough to open a door without pushing. I didn't send it immediately. I waited, letting myself feel the weight of the months and years, every missed birthday, every phone call that came too late, every moment I wasn't there. I let it settle in so I could act deliberately, not impulsively. In the days that followed, I began noticing patterns, small habits that spoke volumes. She checked her email at certain times. She liked to paint in the afternoons. She had a quiet morning routine before the world pulled her in.
I mapped it all in my mind, not to manipulate, but to understand, to meet her where she was, not where I thought she should be. I started making subtle gestures, small signs of involvement that were impossible to ignore. A book she mentioned loving appeared in her mailbox. A drawing pad she had wanted showed up at her doorstep. I didn't call or write an explanation. I simply acted, letting the evidence of care speak. Each act was deliberate, quiet, moral. Each was a brick in the bridge I intended to rebuild. And yet, even as I worked silently, I felt a strange tension building. Someone else was aware of the past, of the money, of the effort I had made quietly. A family member, distant but observant, had left a note hinting that my daughter's mother, or someone close, had noticed the transfers. Their curiosity wasn't malicious, but it had the potential to disrupt everything I was trying to do. I leaned back in my chair, running my hands over my face. Patience would be my ally, precision my tool. The goal wasn't confrontation, it wasn't revenge in the way the world often thinks of it. My goal was balance, truth, and justice of the heart. I wanted clarity for my daughter. I wanted her to see the intention behind the years I had been absent, but still present in every small way. The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. My daughter called. Not a long conversation, just a quick check-in. "Hey," she said, voice guarded but curious. "Hi," I replied. "I wanted to ask about your art project. Can I see it?" There was a pause, a slight catch in her breath. "Sure," she said. And in that moment, something shifted. She was letting me back in, cautiously, carefully. I could feel her walls lowering ever so slightly. The bridge wasn't rebuilt yet, but it had been started. I began to plan the next step. Not a grand gesture, not a confrontation, a subtle revelation that would allow her to understand the truth for herself. I combed through old letters, notes, and messages she had left attached to the transfers. Each one was a clue, a thread connecting intention to understanding, patience to realization. And then I found it, a message I hadn't noticed before, hidden in the metadata of an email. She had written to someone else about me. Not complaints, not anger, but a quiet recognition of what I had done. I think Dad really tried. I didn't see it at the time, but maybe he wasn't just being distant. Maybe he cared in the way he knew how. My chest tightened. There it was, the evidence that my efforts hadn't been wasted. She had always felt the care behind the absence, even if she couldn't articulate it yet. The bridge was not only possible, it was inevitable if I acted carefully. I made a decision. The next gesture had to be both personal and undeniable, something that connected our past to the present, something she couldn't ignore, but that wouldn't overwhelm her. It had to be precise, thoughtful, moral. And just as I started arranging it, I sensed it, the subtle shift in the air, the awareness from someone else, a faint suspicion, a question forming in a family member's mind about why I was suddenly present again. I smiled faintly, not with malice, but with strategy. Let them wonder. Let them see that this wasn't chaos, but careful design. The first move had been made. The second would follow soon. And somewhere in the shadows of this quiet battle, someone who had underestimated my intentions would begin to sense that change was coming. Not punishment, not cruelty, but revelation. Truth wrapped in love and action. And just like that, the night ended, leaving me with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just reacting anymore, I was shaping the story. And my daughter's understanding, slowly unfolding, would be the measure of success.
The house felt heavier that morning, though nothing had changed. The air carried a tension I could almost touch. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but rehearsals never captured the weight of a real confrontation, not the kind that demands truth rather than noise. She appeared in the doorway, calm but wary. My daughter's mother. The one who had left, the one whose choices had fractured our little world years ago. She hadn't expected to see me like this, steady, intentional, a quiet force. "Morning," she said, voice even. "Morning," I replied. Not a greeting, a recognition, a statement that I was here, ready, present. There was a pause, the kind of silence that stretches, carrying the weight of years. Neither of us rushed, neither tried to dominate. I wanted clarity, not victory. "I know why you're here," she said finally. Her words were calm, but the edge beneath them betrayed her unease. "You're involved again?" "I am," I said, and I meant it. "I've been present quietly, financially, emotionally, in every way I could. But I realized that wasn't enough. My daughter needed more than support from a distance. She needed me to act." Her eyes flicked toward the kitchen table, where letters and notes were neatly stacked. Evidence of the years I had poured into our daughter's life quietly. "You mean the money," she said, almost a whisper. "You think sending money makes up for leaving?" I never thought it made up for anything. I hoped it helped, but now I see that it could never replace presence. What I'm doing now, it's about understanding, honesty, rebuilding trust, not paying a debt with cash. She turned away, looking out the window, as if the city could offer her answers. Then she laughed softly, a sound mixed with regret and realization. "You were always trying to fix what you couldn't change. And I didn't see it. I thought you didn't care." Her words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were harsh, but because they were honest. For years, the weight of assumptions, of distance, had built invisible walls between us. Now the walls were cracking. I cared. I still do. I acted the only way I knew how, but I realize now that it wasn't enough. That's why I'm here, facing you, not to fight, not to accuse, but to share the truth, so she can understand it for herself. She turned back to me slowly. Her eyes were softer now, reflective, burdened with guilt. "I left her with you? I thought you'd resent me forever. I didn't realize you were trying all along. I see it now, and I feel terrible for not noticing sooner." The room shifted, tension dissolving into something heavier, quieter. A recognition of mistakes, a shared weight of consequences. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Words had limits. Truth did not. I don't want apologies. Not yet. I want understanding. And I want her to know that she's loved by both of us, even through mistakes, even through distance. Her lips pressed together. Then she nodded, slowly. I can live with that. I can finally let her see it, let her understand that love isn't always perfect, but it's there, even when it's quiet. A fragile pause settled between us, the kind of pause that carries new possibilities, that suggests the world could shift without violence, without loud declarations, that the right words, spoken with honesty and care, can change everything. "And you," she said quietly, "what are you planning next?" I smiled faintly, not in triumph, but in quiet assurance. "I'm going to show her. Not with money, not with force, but with presence. Small gestures, honesty, attention. Every step I take now will be about balance, not punishment. She deserves that clarity. We both do." Her eyes glistened. There was guilt, yes, but also relief. Regret, yes,
but also hope. The shift was subtle, yet profound. The story we had lived, fractured and silent for years, was beginning to breathe again. "You've changed," she said, almost a whisper. "I can see it. Not just for her, but for you, too." "Yes, I have. I needed to. And now I need to make sure she knows the truth on her own terms." The conversation ended not with anger, not with drama, but with the quiet acknowledgement of what had been lost and what could now be regained. The air in the room felt lighter, yet electric, charged with possibility. A shift had occurred that neither of us could fully articulate. And as she left the kitchen, walking past the window into the morning light, I realized something powerful. The moment of confrontation had revealed more than the truth about past mistakes. It had revealed a path forward, a way to rebuild trust, to balance love with intention, to transform betrayal into understanding. I turned back to the letters, the notes, the carefully archived memories, every action I had taken quietly, every transfer, every small gift, every effort to stay connected. They were no longer just gestures. They were the foundation of a new beginning. And somewhere in the house, a quiet hope began to grow, one that promised clarity, reconciliation, and a final act that would leave no question about the depth of love, effort, and truth.
The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, soft and deliberate, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I sat at the table, letters and notes spread before me, waiting for her to arrive. My daughter, the one who had discovered the $3,000 transfers, the one whose confusion had pulled me out of quiet observation into deliberate action. She entered the room cautiously, I scanning the notes, the small gifts, the careful records I had kept over the years. Her expression was a mixture of curiosity, hesitation, and something softer, something that hinted at understanding. "Dad," she said, voice low but steady, I want to know everything. About the money, about why you weren't around, about all of it." I nodded. I had expected this day, the moment where honesty would no longer be optional, where the quiet gestures and secret transfers would finally meet explanation. It started long before you asked, before I could even think about sending money, before I could plan small gestures. Life, it got complicated. I wanted to be there for you, but I couldn't always be present. I made mistakes. I missed moments that mattered. Her eyes softened slightly, waiting, listening. "I sent the money every month because I wanted to support you, not because I thought it would buy love or attention, because I wanted to help you pursue your dreams, even from afar. I wanted to give you opportunities I couldn't give in person, and I wanted to make up for the years we lost." She nodded, taking in the words slowly, the reality settling over her face. "But there's more," I said. "The truth isn't just about money. It's about why it all seemed so secretive. Your mother, she left suddenly when you were little. I couldn't stop it. I tried, but I failed. And when I sent the money, I kept it quiet because I didn't want her or anyone else to think I was trying to interfere or control. I wanted it to be for you, not anyone else." Her gaze dropped to the notes, reading words she had written herself, words I hadn't noticed before. I didn't understand," she whispered. I thought you didn't care, that you had abandoned me too." I reached across the table, placing a hand over hers. "I never abandoned you. I was just learning how to love in a way I could. Not perfectly, not visibly, but with every step, every dollar, every note, I was trying to show up for you, even if it wasn't obvious." Her eyes glistened. "All this time, it was for me?" "Yes," I said, voice steady. And it still is. Every choice I make now, every gesture, is to be here for you, to show you that love doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it waits, but it's always there. She paused, then exhaled slowly. The tension that had built for years in her small frame seemed to ease a little. I think I understand now. I see why you did what you did. And I forgive you. Her words were gentle, but heavy with meaning. Forgiveness, a word I had waited years to hear. Not just for me, but for her too. To release the burden of resentment, misunderstanding, and the sense of loss we both carried. Yet, even in that forgiveness, there was an unspoken choice. The choice of how we would move forward. Could I continue quietly, supporting her from afar? Could I rebuild the bridge fully, step by step, gesture by gesture? Or did this revelation demand something bolder, something more visible, more undeniable? I realized then that the real betrayal wasn't money, or absence, or misunderstandings. It was the lost connection, the opportunities for love that had slipped through our fingers. And the consequence of that loss fell on both of us. On her for feeling abandoned, on me for failing to show love in the ways she needed. I could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down. Not guilt, not shame. Responsibility, the moral choice, to act with integrity, to honor the truth without forcing her into drama, to rebuild trust without making her feel manipulated or obligated. I have a choice now, I said softly. I can let this rest as it is, quietly rebuilding trust. Or I can make it undeniable. Undeniable that I've always cared, always tried. It's a choice I have to make carefully, for both our sakes. She looked at me, and I could see the awareness in her eyes. The understanding that what had seemed like betrayal was really a story of love, miscommunication, and missed moments. The choice hanging in the air was ours together, even if unspoken. Her hand tightened around mine. Whatever you choose, I trust you. I know you're trying to do right by me now. That's enough. For now. I nodded, absorbing the gravity of her words, the quiet weight of responsibility, of moral action. It wasn't over. It would never truly be over until the bridge was rebuilt completely. But the first stones had been laid. I looked out the window, thinking of all the small gestures, the letters, the careful actions I had taken, and all the steps I still had to take, and I understood something deeply. Revenge wasn't about punishment. It was about balance. It was about correcting the wrongs of absence with presence, of misunderstanding with honesty, of distance with love. The choice lingered, heavy and powerful. Not a dramatic explosion, not a loud confrontation, just the quiet moral weight of what had to come next. The path forward was visible, but the first move still rested in my hands. And as the sunlight shifted, casting long shadows across the kitchen table, I realized the next step would define everything. Would I act boldly to make the love undeniable, or continue building quietly, step by careful step? The answer hung there, silent and potent, waiting.